just a little bit of a background about UKTI. In London, we're split into sector teams. So these are the different sectors that we have. Obviously, fashion at the top, but we cover, unlike the other regions in the UK, which are generalist, we split into all these sector teams. So my colleagues on the fashion team, we all have industry experience, industry background, and we can help you with your export business. A little bit about the structure in terms of what we have. International trade advisors like myself, and one of my colleagues, Toyin, who's here today, she's also a trade advisor. There are 6 of us on the team. We also have our network of overseas commercial officers, which are based in the embassies and the consulates around the world, to offer their advice and their local knowledge. The Tradeshow Access Program, one of our key services, which has been running for a very long time now, is one of the topics I'm going to speak about today. The e-exporting program is something that some of you might want to look into as well. We have a new digital initiative at head office, which is, I suppose the government has recognized that exporting via direct sales online is a very big part of the export business in general now, and they're supporting that with a team which can specifically help your business through its web development, and also linking you to marketplaces where you can sell more bulk stock into new markets. One of the other factors that we work on quite heavily is our events and missions program, and I'm going to speak about that today. So the main topics are trade shows and missions. International trade advisors, who you work with at UKTI. As I said, we have an industry background. We can give you some export strategy and advice. I mean, from my own personal background, I was running a brand before I joined UKTI, and you get called upon so many times. You've got different markets, different leads to follow up, and often you don't have a sounding board. You don't have anybody to speak to. So we can help you with that. If you need somebody to come and speak to, you've been approached by a distributor, an agent, you're not sure how to tackle business in a particular market, just come and have a chat with us. We're always open. We'll help you with routes to market, obstacles with new markets, and connecting you to opportunities overseas. And we'll also discuss relevant aspects of the business to do with trademarking, cash flow, anything about production. If you're looking for sourcing, new avenues in Portugal, Italy, Eastern Europe, China, if we can't help directly, we'll often know somebody who can. And of course, signposting you to other avenues of business support. Our overseas teams, the way that they can be very useful for you is feedback on potential agents, distributors, showrooms, PRs. If you're exhibiting at a trade show like this, or a trade show overseas, you'll get approached, and it's always tempting to go with somebody who shows an interest. It's quite flattering, but you don't know anything about them. So with our teams overseas, like our commercial office in Japan, for example, they could give you some direct feedback on an agent or a distributor that might have shown an interest. They might not be the right one for you, though. They may not have a good history in the market. They might not have developed other brands in the way that you would like. So it's just about having a conversation just to make sure that you've ticked those boxes before you go into business. Often it can be crucial to know elements of duty and tariff. I'm sure it's come up in other presentations today as well. But we can advise, if you're exporting to the States, you're going to have to look at serious duty levels on some of your products if they're made in cotton. How to look at your pricing to adjust for that if you're going to work with an agent as well. Also cultural feedback and opinion, items of business etiquette, meetings with Japanese or Chinese for the first time, how you should behave, how you should exchange business cards. These are the kind of things that our commercial teams can help with. Another feature which I've used quite well with a couple of clients recently is where they're struggling to get a payment out of somebody in they've shipped goods or they're waiting for a deposit and they don't have any correspondence, our commercial team from the embassy can call up locally and just understand the situation in the local language. And often, just the very fact that the embassy has made a phone call to a retailer can jog them into finding their checkbook or making an international payment. We also organize regular one-to-one meetings in London between our commercial officers and our companies. Recently we held one in January which included these markets at the bottom of the slide here. So moving on to the Trade Show Access Programme, maybe a little bit of audience participation here, and I know we've got some experienced trade show visitors in our midst, so why would you exhibit at a trade show overseas? Meet new customers. Anything else? Just purely get orders, okay. Meeting customers, getting orders. Networking, good. Any advance? Market research? Feedback on your collection? Yeah. Meeting agents? These are the ones I wrote down last night whilst drinking a glass of wine. Display the new collection, yes. Check out other brands' collections, of course. So positioning yourself in the market, very important. Market knowledge, market research, buyers, agents, distributors, old customers. I think as well, staying in the mind of buyers. I mean, a lot of the time, you'll spend, you go to a trade show, you'll spend quite a lot of money doing it, and you may come away thinking, oh, I haven't taken a vast amount. I haven't, maybe I've covered my costs with my order book, but more importantly, you've been there and your presence has been, I suppose, felt amongst the buying fraternity, and you've stayed in the mind of buyers. Because I was once told by a buyer, and I'm sure it's very true across the industry, that they want to commit to a brand when they can see it's going to stay around. And they have to know it's going to be there for at least 4 seasons, maybe, for beyond 4 seasons, because they won't start making a profit on the collections they buy until it's that 4th season, because they're introducing a new brand to their customers in the store. So the customers have to get used to it. The 1st season is going to be difficult. 2nd season maybe a bit better. 3rd season it improves, and then 4th season we start to see profit. But if you only go to a trade show once and then you change your mind and go to another trade show, you're not displaying that consistency, and buyers will lose faith in you if you don't continue to represent. Even if it's not been a fantastic show, you've stayed there, you're still in their mind, they've seen your collection. So I think that's personally a really important factor. And of course, writing orders, yeah, massive bonus if you can do a bit of that. So the way that we can support you with the Trade Show Access Programme is there is some grant funding available to do this if you're an eligible company, if you meet our criteria. And on the gov.uk website, there is a spreadsheet which you can pull off, which lists all of the supported shows. I've just edited this right down to show a selection of ones covering some of the Men's Fashion Week, and basically it gives the dates of the shows. The most recent schedule for the coming year will be updated soon, and it also gives you the details of the trade association contact who you need to speak to about the application process if you're keen to get the support. This particular individual happens to be sitting over here. Paul Alger, for those of you who don't know, we work very closely with Paul on the Trade Show Access Programme, and he should be your first port of call with questions about particular shows, which ones are right for your brand, and the application process. When to apply is quite crucial. We have a lot of brands that hear about the programme, but then they've got a show coming up. They're a little bit too late to apply. Paul, am I right in saying it's usually after the previous season? Yeah, and with an 8-week lead time before, at least, before the show. So here is a selection I just edited down to show what's on offer. And when it says Paris Men's Fashion Week, for example, that covers all of the shows that are on for men in Paris. So Capsule, Trenoy, Man, and similarly for the women, you get Premier Class, Who's Next, and on the women's side, interestingly, you also have a lot of the private showrooms are supported now as well with the financial funding. That's not so much the case on the men's side yet. When a company applies for financial support to go to an overseas trade show, obviously we know it's a huge expense to exhibit overseas, and there is a criteria in place that we need to stick to when we're kind of vetting companies, really. All of the guidance is on the link I've put up there, and one of the initial pieces of information is that you can apply for a grant a total of 12 times, but 6 of those times must be in an emerging or a high growth market. And these are the emerging markets, and it needs to be a show which is approved in an emerging market as well. But at the moment, there aren't that many shows on the schedule which are approved in emerging markets. There are a few in China, and there was one in Hong Kong, but it's moved to China. And I think at the moment that is pretty much it, isn't it? Russia, we have one in Russia. So you with European and North American established trade shows, you have basically 6, which 6 times you can apply for a grant. What we're looking for when we assess companies is that they are UK-based businesses, SME status, so less than 250 employees, and annual turnover not exceeding 50 million. We're looking for new exporters, so overall turnover, exports not more than 25% of your turnover, so implying that you've got a stable domestic base before you are looking to export. We also, other factors which are important are that you cannot be committed to attend the event before you look for a grant, so i.e. you can already afford to do it, but you've found out there's grant funding and you want to apply for it. This is about helping people who can't technically go to these shows to help, the government's looking to increase the export business of those brands, so we are assisting in that way. When we get applications through, which come from UKTI or one of the other trade associations, like the British Footwear Association or the British Jewellery and Giftware Association, we usually have a phone call with the brand if it's their first time, just to establish a few facts about the business, make sure they're stable, they've been trading for 4 or 5 seasons, they are importantly able to deliver the new orders which have been taken. What we don't want to do is try, give financial assistance to brands that are too new and they can't really do anything with big orders. It wouldn't make any sense. We have a conversation about their supply chain, make sure they can deliver, and that their website and identity and marketing materials are all there. A little bit about target stockists, if they're going to a particular show, why they're going to a show, who they've identified they're going to try and do business there with, and that they're serious and committed. It all makes sense. We can't just have somebody that's having a stab in the dark at some new business. I thought I'd just put up a little slide about what the levels of funding are that are available for the 6 shows in established and 6 shows in emerging. All the European shows would come under short haul, and USA shows under the long haul bracket. High growth markets like the Chinese shows we've discussed would be the 2,500 level. because you're eligible for 6 grants, I thought I'd just put up a little scenario of how you could, in effect, play it, because you know, think about a strategy of grants, really. You don't want to burn through them too quickly. You want to make them for the right shows. And if I was doing this in-house, looking at my cash flow, I'd want to kind of look to balance it as well. So I've put some approximate costs of a stand in here, which, you know, you can spend a lot more than that, but in my experience, you might be looking to spend about that. You could get one for a bit less if you were willing to take half a stand if it was just accessories or footwear or something like that. But if you used 4 grants in Europe, you could be looking at £4,000 a time for the cost of the stand. The UKTI grant would come in here. Approximate cost of travel and accommodation for, say, 2 people getting Eurostars, staying in an Airbnb. You could be looking at this much spend with a reimbursement of that much from the UKTI grant for the European shows. If you put in some American shows as well, say, as another 2, a little bit more expense there, but the grant increases as well. Of course, the travel and accommodation is going to be a bit more. So overall then, just plotting out 6 shows and the expenditure, fashion's not a cheap industry to be in, is it, basically, when you look at the figures and promoting your brand overseas. But I think you've got to bear this in mind if you're planning this over the next couple of years. This is what you could achieve if you're successful in the grants. I think I'm right in saying, Paul, there is a group promotion fee as part of it as well, because the trade associations, they visit the shows, they do some fantastic promotional material for all of the exhibitors, producing maps and guides for the buyers who are going to be visiting the trade shows. And there is a promotional fee which comes out of the grant, so it's is it 200 per show, something to be aware of. So that would probably come out of your grants, but looking at a total show cost of 34,000, you would be spending about 25,000, which is really good value for money if you think about what you could do if you do it properly and you get the right buyers on the stand. So if you're considering the Trade Show Access Program to go to some overseas trade shows, come and have a chat with us or your trade association for the fashion and textile industry. We'd always recommend you visit the show prior to exhibiting at it. I think you want to know, is the show in a great location? Is it next to any other shows? Is it going to get good footfall? Within the show, what kind of location would you want as well is pretty critical. So you can speak to the other exhibitors if they'll talk to you. Speak to the buyers that you see. Speak to buyers in that market outside of the show. Do they shop at that show? Which shows do they visit? You know, these are all the questions you need to be thinking about. Looking around the show where you want to be in terms of other brand adjacencies, footfall, where you don't want to be. You may have no choice or very little say over this the first time you exhibit, but it's worth bearing in mind. When you go through the process, you apply to the trade show for a stand space, and then you go to apply for a grant at the same time. You could look to combine your trade show presence with one of our other services, which is the Overseas Market Introduction Service, which I shortened to OMIS here. It's where our commercial officers, who I already mentioned, will do some research on buyers in that market and potentially invite them to the show when they know what your stand is. We've used this quite a lot in the past, and it works very well. When you know you've got a stand at a particular show, and we can put you in touch with our commercial team to organize that. OMIS is a chargeable service, just to say that, and wherever we have, or wherever fashion is an important part of an export market, we have colleagues who know the industry well, and they'll be able to give you put together a piece of work with them about, I want, 10 buyers, 12 buyers, I'm looking for agents, I'm looking for distributors or franchise partners, whichever way you're playing it, and they can say, here are some names, we've called them, we've told them your stand number, and they're going to come by, make appointments for you. So have a chat with us about that if you have a show in mind and you would like to use that service. I think bear in mind, I mean, from my own experience, obviously it's an obvious point, but all shows are in competition with each other. So they're all going to be keen to sell you some stand space. Just because one particular show organizer is extremely keen for you to be on in his or her show, take it with a pinch of salt, I would say. Just get some more opinion. They're all going to effectively say that because they're in the business of selling space. Make a target list of the stores you want to try and approach before you go to the show, and do some marketing ahead of the season to that target list of stores. You hopefully will have shot a campaign. You can send out a little e-flyer to let people know where you're going to be. A couple of things to bear in mind with the fashion overseas shows that we have funding for in the States. We have funding for the New York Fashion Weeks, but not the Vegas Fashion Weeks. This can be a factor to a certain extent because Vegas comes towards the end of the season, and often the buyers are more likely to place an order there than they would in New York, where they see you early on, and then they say, "Oh, I'll see you in Vegas," or something like that. But Vegas is currently not supported, apart from the British Footwear Association supports one of the footwear shows. Similarly, in Europe, Berlin is supported, but shows in Munich are not. And Munich is a lot of the show and, well, they call it show and order and premium order. A lot of the business in Germany is actually done in Munich, whereas they'll see you in Berlin early on. So do bear that in mind if you're developing a trade show strategy to target either of these markets. We can support some but not all. Like I said earlier, Paris Women's Fashion Week, the showrooms are supported, but the Men's Fashion Week, currently showrooms are not supported. Also simple factors like, do the dates of the trade shows work with your critical path, your sampling? Can you get your samples together in time? Obvious points perhaps to mention, but I think this was halfway through the glass of wine last night. And also think about not having a scattergun approach to your trade shows. I think it's quite important to have a strategy and stick to it, and not hop around too much from one show to another. And then the buyers will think you're a little bit, well, they haven't quite made their mind up about their brand or their adjacencies, or they're just tempted by maybe that one they got a better offer or something like that. I think it's good to show some consistency. I look back in my client files just to have a think about a client journey through the Trade Show Access Program, and I found one which, just to illustrate, I'm not naming the brand here, but when they were on about 100k turnover, they went to Paris Men's 3 times. I believe it was Trenoy they did in season after season. They'd probably been knocking on the door of trying to get into Pitti Uomo, which, as some of you may know, is a very important show on the menswear calendar, and eventually they did get in for January. And then that became part of their strategy alongside Paris. And then their grants, they ran out of grants when they got to this level. But when a brand is getting to this level of turnover, that's where we see them as being more self-sufficient. And we're helping with this program for them to stand on their feet. And then once they're there, they're up and running. So I think that illustrates that quite nicely. So moving on from Trade Show Access Program to Fashion Trade Missions. These are, some of you may have heard of them. They are quite popular in the fashion sector because we tend to try and visit perhaps markets where there aren't trade shows, or markets where the buyers travel to Europe a lot, but the brands don't go there so much. So it's an educational process for the companies to go, as well as a bonding process for the retailers and the contacts you already have. So in the fashion sector, we've organized missions to these markets over the last 2 years. Japan is one which goes every year. South Korea was very successful 2 years ago. Sweden was a menswear mission. Singapore was to a trade show called Blueprint. Denmark was shoes and accessories. USA was to Men's Week in January last month. Very successful little mission we did there, and Hong Kong is coming up in March. So that's the markets we've been looking at. I mean, the key factor for this is having somebody, one of our colleagues in the embassy or employed over in post, who's willing to support it and has a good local network. So we're always working with our teams on this. One of the key features is the showcase, which we have at either a central venue or often the ambassador's residence. We have a networking reception at the same time with all the local buyers invited. The buyers love it because they get an invitation from the embassy to come along for a glass of champagne and to browse some British brands, and we have very good turnout. Companies also have time for individual market research and follow-up appointments. And I mean, I've put this in bold because I think it's perhaps the most important thing about this, because when you're a brand, it's easy just to send your samples to the other side of the world and expect that it's going to result in orders. You never go there. In China, Japan, maybe USA. It's often a financial thing, which is understandable, but this is a chance to do it with a bit of financial support and in a group-supported environment, and you can meet the people that you're selling to, and you can build those relationships, which is a very important part of long-term business in these overseas markets. I've put in a couple of pictures here. This is setting up in South Korea, 2014. This was a very well attended and actually well funded by the embassy. A great week over there. We have a busy shot here from Japan in 2014. Obviously, I wanted to pick a nice busy one, but this generally, I mean, over the course of a day and a half last time, we had over 500 buyers through the doors of the ambassador's residence. So we do have, it comes in waves like any trade show, but we have some fantastic attendance. Here are some criteria which you would need to meet if you were interested. Obviously, UK company. Ideally, you're not already working with an agent or a distributor in that particular market. It's not a hard and fast rule, but we do like to take people who don't have that representation, who are perhaps, they already have a few direct orders, they have interest, they have inquiries, but they are not signed up with somebody yet. We also obviously want to see financial commitment, and there's a selection process that takes place between us here and the post, the overseas team. As the group comes together, it gets curated in a certain way, and often we get questioned about why we take them in the times of year that we do, because, for example, Japan happens in late October, early November, which is outside of typical sales seasons. So the reason is because all of the buyers are actually in Tokyo at that point, and they're still, the Japanese place their orders very late, so they are almost in the middle of their showroom session, which is beyond what we would normally have, but they're all in town and ready to look. Just touching then on the Japan one, I thought I'd just give you a little bit run through of how it worked last time. It was a collaborative mission between ourselves, UKTI Japan, UK Fashion and Textile Association, and BATF, who are the British Jewellery and Giftware Association's umbrella body in the Midlands. We had 30 brands from all across the UK. We do a pre-mission briefing in London where we give market information, economy, so on, demographics, logistics for the event. Then we have an in-market briefing in Tokyo at the embassy from the embassy team, where they will typically invite some local, long-established retailers or people who've made it in the market to come and talk to the brands about best practice. Then we have the showcase, a networking reception, which is the one of the highlights of the week. A few drinks in the ambassador's residence and a chance to meet the people you are doing business with. We organise retail tours, follow-up meetings, and we have presentations also, which were fantastic, from United Arrows and Isetan on the last trip. Two of the real key retailers, United Arrows Select Store, Isetan Department Store, really well respected and interesting presentations from individuals at those organisations. There are also some market visit support grants available to assist with the mission if you are eligible, and these depend on how far away, like whether it's long haul and short haul. Japan, I believe, was £700 against a participation fee of £700 or 750. So it pretty much cancels out the participation fee. As I said, the pre-mission briefing touches on factors that you should be aware of for doing business over there, and what to expect from the program. And importantly, key retailers, information about how they work, whether they buy through agents, distributors, or direct. When my colleague did the New York menswear mission pre-mission briefing, she actually had photographs of the buyers' faces all printed out for the trade show. So, really giving you a helping hand with identifying the right people when they come round. Here's a little bit of feedback from one of the companies we took to Japan. This particular company used to have an agent. It wasn't really working for them. They'd never been to the market. They came with us. They broke up from their agent amicably, and then they decided to come on the mission to see, to suss things out a bit better. And whilst they were there, they met 2 other potential agents and learned a lot more about the market. Here's another little success story we've had from a brand that does menswear accessories. Alice Made This. They came on the mission in 2013, I believe, and now they are on the front cover of the Isetan Men's Style Guide next to Hackett. They met an agent after coming on the mission once or twice. They're now working with that agent, and he's selling well in the market. Isetan being the main department store for menswear at the moment, really. And here's your Instagram feed. A picture of Alice Made This' cufflinks and accessories on display in the department store. So really showing the kind of going on a mission, working with UKTI, client journey to now being on the shop floor of one of the best department stores in the world. Here are some pictures from our Instagram feed of the New York mission. We partnered with a PR company called Spindle to do an event at Soho House for networking, and several of the people from the brands that we took displaying at Liberty Trade Show. And here's a short video.
UKTI have been amazing. I started with them in 2013, and the support we've had to develop the brand and showcase it overseas has been incredible. Without UKTI, we would not be here, and you.
Going to trade shows really benefited the brand because, we took inspiration and we saw what other people were doing. But also, it's just good to sort of see how people pitch and sort of sell things in a wholesale environment instead.
It's also nice to be in a different market, in the US market, so to get that feedback from buyers out here in the US that may not necessarily visit London has been really positive.
We've had a really great response. Buyers internationally as well as America, so we've had a lot of people come from Japan, Korea, and the US. Yeah.
I would suggest all the new designers to get support from UKTI, because all the guys there, they have huge industry experience. They are not just someone telling you things. They have done this before.
The buyers out here have really responded well to it. It's been really good for me to come out. It's an introduction into the market. I've had a lot of good feedback from the buyers, and I think that actually they're very, very keen on made in England products. So I think when you get one of these genuine products out here, I think they really respond to it well.
Working with UKTI has been a really great experience so far. This is my very first trade show with them, so it's been a fantastic opportunity. As I'm such a young brand, I would definitely recommend other brands in my kind of at my stage to get involved, as I wouldn't have this opportunity to be at Liberty Fairs in New York.
Working with UKTI has been fantastic. Actually, great bunch of staff. Really good at delivering what they promise, and for me, running a company and also having to worry about creatives the whole time, it's really important for people to do what they say, and it just makes the journey easy. So UKTI get a thumbs up from me.
I think that any designer that is looking to expand their brand overseas cannot do it without the help of UKTI. So any brands out there who are thinking about it, don't hesitate, contact UKTI.